Throughout history, heaven and earth have been created, with gods and demons coexisting side by side and peacefully coexisting. He is the master of the temple, sacred and flawless, noble and elegant, admired by thousands of people. She is the heir of the lord of the demon realm, beautiful as fire, proud and carefree, sometimes imposing. A momentary accidental encounter made the two fall in love with the peach blossom forest. An unexpected rebellion cut off the robe and cut off the relationship. Who betrayed who? Who let down who? Who planned everything? Will the two people who meet again join hands with Tianya? Both male and female leads are pure. Keywords of the novel. Butterfly Xiaoyue of Immortal Couple Love, no pop-ups. Butterfly Xiaoyue of Immortal Couple Love, complete collection download, latest chapter reading of Butterfly Xiaoyue of Immortal Couple Love. 1, Chapter 1. Dreaming of the Past World, Heartbroken and Heartbroken, the Beginning of Reincarnation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Dreaming of the Past World, Breaking Hearts, Starting of Reincarnation above the 9 heavens, there was a raging war, with blood flowing into a river. Everyone was fighting with blood, but the two in the distance were facing each other with 4 eyes, wielding swords. Why? The man, dressed in white clothes and with vermilion on his mouth, stared fixedly at the woman in red in front of him. Although disheveled, he still exuded a royal aura. I saw the other person's beautiful face full of indifference, and the man couldn't believe it. His anger surged and he spewed out a splash of blood. At this moment, I can't understand why the two people who were still reciting poetry and comparing swords the previous moment turned against each other, and why they were still warm in their arms the previous moment, but now they are hurting behind their backs. The uncontrollable flow of blood from my chest couldn't resist the pain in my heart. I closed my eyes and let out a bitter smile. Unexpectedly, the figure in front of him flickered, but the woman leaned sideways beside his ear. It's over. The man was shocked and couldn't react in an instant. Suddenly, he gave a heavy blow to his chest, and his entire body flew out into the mortal world. In a blink of an eye, her red hair passed by. Looking at her increasingly distant face and reminiscing about past events, her unwillingness grew stronger and stronger in her heart. She looked at the blue sky with anger and said, "God Moon, someday, I will definitely come back and make you pay the price." Suddenly, a clever woman with red hair patched everywhere in a tattered shirt woke up and slapped her chest in an effort to calm herself down. She looked around and felt relieved as if she had just had a dream, which was all blood. It was terrifying to think about it. Stay calm, it's not true anyway. She stood up nonchalantly, and the woman looked up at the hour and touched her empty stomach. It was time to eat. The woman climbed onto a sturdy tree trunk and looked down at the snacks along the way. The fragrance is strong. Even if you really want to eat it, you don't want to steal someone else's food like a thief. Although there is only a slight difference between her and a thief now, she is a beggar. But so what, thieves and beggars can't have self-esteem anymore. Instinctively unwilling, she had to go up the mountain to catch some wild game by herself. To be honest, every time she catches prey, her skills are very cunning. Unknowingly, people may think he knows martial arts, but in reality, that's not the case. As usual, the red-haired woman hid in the grass, waiting for her prey to take the bait. Her beautiful apricot eyes remained motionless as she watched the trap she had made. As soon as the prey was about to take the bait, a faint sound suddenly came from behind. The woman frowned discontentedly and turned around, only to find a face without facial features. The woman exclaimed in shock, "Monster! You, don't come over." The other party watched as she kept beating and said helplessly, "Almsgiver, take a good look at me and see if I'm a monster." The woman pounced a few times and carefully observed that it was actually a person. In anger, she suddenly sat up and pointed angrily at the monk. "What are you scaring people for no reason? Do you know you've ruined my big deal? My prey has all flown away." The master wearing a white robe sweated profusely and said, "Almsgiver, it's not that I'm scaring people for no reason, but that I'm short in stature. When you see it, it's just my head." After saying this, the woman noticed the difference in figure, her mouth twitching uncontrollably, and she hugged her chest with her cheeks bulging. "Humph. Who asked you to shave your head so shiny that it's even cleaner than your face? No matter what, you must compensate me for a meal." The master smiled and said, "A meal is not difficult. I only ask the benefactor to agree to one thing for me." The woman crossed her legs leisurely, looking contented. "Master, don't speak so easily. It's only by presenting something practical that people can be convinced." After speaking, she saw the other person come up with a bag of food out of thin air. The woman looked at the other person incredulously. "I didn't expect you to be so powerful." The woman opened the inside bag and found that there was everything in the roast duck pancake. She swallowed her saliva and said, "Speak up, what do you need me to do?" "Hey, I refuse if it's beyond my ability." The master suddenly chuckled a few times in confusion. "Don't worry, benefactor. You can do this, only you can do it." The woman didn't understand what he meant and was about to ask, only to find that there was suddenly fog surrounding her. She exclaimed in terror, "What are you doing?" But there was only a hazy haze all around, and nothing could be seen or heard. The woman wanted to escape, but found that her feet were not moving. The red-haired woman tried to move her feet in vain. When she looked up, she was suddenly hit by the thick fog. Before she fainted, she seemed to hear the voice of the master. "Heading west, you will understand the beginning and end of everything, as well as the true meaning of butterfly Xiaoyue. Xiaoyue felt like a feather floating in a daze, which made her very scared. So she squinted her eyes and opened them to adapt to the surrounding light. But she suddenly realized that she was in a strange forest. Startled, she immediately stood up and realized that the clothes she was wearing were different. She was no longer dressed in rags, but dressed in a young gentleman with red and gold border patterns. Her long red hair was tied up high with a gorgeous golden crown, and her exquisite yet handsome oval face revealed a hint of her hidden heroism. Xiaoyue was surprised by her own changes and came out to plan a meal. She didn't want to become wealthy and handsome anymore. I wonder if she would want to go back. Xiaoyue touched her chin and pondered for a moment before suddenly realizing that she seemed to be going somewhere. Then he thumped up and walked forward. As she moved forward, her surroundings remained calm and unusual. Xiaoyue frowned inexplicably, as she had walked until now and had not found any living creatures. A strange emotion arose in her heart, and she wanted to go back, but her body instinctively wanted to move forward. At this moment, mournful cries came intermittently from afar, causing a shock in her heart. She immediately ran towards the source of the sound and opened the grass to discover an ancient cave that seemed to be old. The walls were engraved with intricate and difficult to understand spells, which couldn't contain her curiosity. Xiaoyue then delved deeper and further forward, and the mournful cries became even more piercing. Not long after, Xiaoyue found no way out. But she was sure it was the heart-wrenching and lung-wrenching cries coming from here, but why wasn't there? When Xiaoyue was lost in deep thought, she accidentally realized that the spell on the front stone wall was more cumbersome than the other spells. And I seemed to be possessed, staring at it tightly and slowly touching the texture on the wall. In the moment of contact, the entire cave suddenly shook. Xiaoyue regained her senses and found a mysterious light in front of her. After the blank space passed, Feng Ming suddenly came from ahead. After seeing the visitor clearly, Xiaoyue widened her eyes in fear and ran away. Oh my goodness! That's a phoenix. The fire phoenix seems to be chasing Xiaoyue purposefully. Xiaoyue hid in the distance beside a huge rock and thought that she could not find a sigh of relief. Suddenly a fireball hit the sky and blew Xiaoyue away. Xiaoyue was able to climb up and touch her aching leg. Unexpectedly, it was killing her. Looking back, she realized that the person had no intention of giving up at all. Xiaoyue exerted all her strength to escape, and the unavoidable Xiaoyue ran towards the direction of the mantra at the front. However, all around were stone walls. Xiaoyue felt anxious in her heart. It's great now. There's no way ahead, and there's still a ghost in the back. She really finished playing now. The more dangerous it was, the harder it was to calm down. Xiaoyue skillfully groped the wall, hoping for a way out. Upon seeing this, Huang spread his wings and used the wind to attack Xiaoyue. Xiaoyue didn't have time to escape and immediately flew towards the stone wall. Ah! Watching herself about to collide with the stone wall, Xiaoyue closed her eyes in terror. However, the imagined pain did not occur, it was just a slight tingling pain in the hands and feet. Xiaoyue finally realized that she was lying on the ground. And I am still intact, happy in my heart, but I didn't expect the stone wall to be hollow. Is this to cover up the truth? Or do you have other goals? She was supposed not to be involved in these things, but she had already entered this place and didn't know how to get out, so she had to grit her teeth and move forward. This is my first book in the God and Demon series. I apologize for any shortcomings and kindly ask everyone to support and rate your valuable votes, monthly tickets, and rewards. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. First Encounter, Love and Hate Lingering. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. First Encounter, Love and Hate Lingering. After walking for a while, I found a crystal coffin hanging out of thin air not far away. It seemed like there was a person lying inside. Shouldn't that be a millennium-old corpse lying inside? Xiaoyue shuddered at her own thought, but then turned around and realized that if that were the case, there might be a lot of gold and silver treasures inside the coffin. Although it's not good to steal money from the dead, she won't take it all. At most, I can take some back to pass the time. So, Xiaoyue cautiously came to the bottom of the coffin, worrying about how to get up. She looked at the bare scene around her, with no auxiliary tools to go up. Regret, anxiety, and unwillingness surged in her heart. In anger, he stomped his foot 3 times. Unexpectedly, the entire cave suddenly shook uncontrollably. Just when Xiaoyue thought the entire cave was about to collapse, she panicked and went all out. Unexpectedly, the crystal coffin fell from the sky, and Xiaoyue's eyes widened in disbelief. She immediately dodged and rolled aside. At this moment, the noise in the cave also stopped. Seeing that there was no danger around, he tiptoed to the coffin. Through the layers of glass, when she saw the appearance of the person in the tomb, Xiaoyue's face widened in shock. She had never seen such a beautiful man before. With fair and tender skin, a handsome face, delicate facial features, a tall nose bridge, snow-white hair, and a pure and elegant white outfit, the forehead strap placed between his forehead does not affect his masculine beauty. Xiaoyue leaned against her face and savored it as if appreciating precious works. Unable to enjoy it, she held her fingers and poked him up and down, even boldly ravaging the man's face. Xiaoyue, who was enjoying it, didn't notice that the man's fingers curled up while lying down. I don't know that all of my actions have long fallen into the eyes of others. The person who was invisible on the side immediately cast a spell upon seeing the situation. The previously disappeared phoenix suddenly appeared and rushed toward Xiaoyue. However, the phoenix's speed was too fast, and Xiaoyue didn't have time to make a mistake. Just as she thought she was about to be shattered by the phoenix's claws, her whole body suddenly emitted a dazzling light and disappeared in place. Oh! She just disappeared for no reason. It seems like someone helped her. The person who was hiding in the darkness gradually walked out, and due to the refraction of light, only half of his face could be seen. He turned his eyes to look at the person in the coffin, and without hesitation, slowly opened his hands. A pearl with colorful lights hung in the air, slowly entering the body of the man in the coffin under the spell of the mysterious person. At the moment of entering its body, the light instantly burst forth. As the dazzling light faded away, the caster knelt down on one knee with an extremely serious expression. "Congratulations, Master, you have been reborn." As soon as the words fell, the coffin in front of me exploded with a loud bang, and a thick mist loomed over the sky, revealing a man with outstretched hair and a powerful aura. The man stood with his hand down and spoke softly. "She's here." The man listened to his master's calm voice, without any doubt, and his thin lips moved slightly. "Master, no one has come here." As soon as the words were spoken, there was a sudden silence around. The man slowly turned around and looked at the person kneeling in front of him with a sharp gaze. "Tianya, you knowingly concealed it. Who gave you the courage to act recklessly?" "I dare not." Faced with the owner's anger, Tianya immediately lowered his head anxiously. Although he guessed in his heart who the owner was talking about, he still hoped that the owner would not pursue him deeply. Mi Shenyang looked up and closed his eyes, his heart churning. "She's here, and there's still her touch on my face, just like at that time. She hasn't changed." In a daze, his thoughts suddenly recalled 1,000 years ago, when he had just reached adulthood but was already the heir of the temple, and she was only a little girl half as short as him. People are small and ghosts are big, but they are not afraid of him at all. They always look lonely and proud. From then on, he knew that she was not just a simple girl. Later, she was chosen as a hostage by the demon world and sent to the divine world. Although they supervised each other, they unconsciously developed a liking for each other. Afterwards, they often discussed various things, and although they often competed, they already regarded each other as their most important person in their hearts. However, due to various reasons, the two eventually parted ways and even regarded each other as enemies. He never even thought about why it turned out like this. But no matter what, he can't let himself get addicted to it. In the midst of my thoughts, a strange blue light danced in my cold eyes. Everything goes according to plan, Tianya. The kneeling person disappeared as soon as they nodded and responded. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. The Starting Point of Destiny in Wan'an Village. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. The Starting Point of Destiny in Wan'an Village. In a simple and folk village surrounded by deep mountains, people were collecting and selling as usual. Suddenly, a figure flew into the air and, without anyone's knowledge, crashed onto a nearby small car. People widened their eyes as they looked at the strange person descending from the sky, suppressing their anxiety and looking at the incoming person with great vigilance. After a while, the mysterious guest slowly stood up, occasionally murmuring in pain from the corner of his mouth. Xiaoyue, with a bitter face, spat out a straw and touched her painful back, propping herself up and standing up, only to find that the people around her seemed to be avoiding her like snakes and scorpions. Xiaoyue, whose mouth twitched uncontrollably, jumped out of the car and people took a step back. Xiaoyue is speechless. Is she so terrifying? Are you surprisingly okay? A woman dressed as a lady looked up and down at Xiaoyue in disbelief, which really opened her eyes. Of course I'm fine. Xiaoyue couldn't understand what she meant and couldn't help but tilt her head. Did you see that she fell from such a high place unscathed? She must be a monster. One of them muttered to himself, and everyone responded in unison, accusing Xiaoyue with open and closed mouths. Xiaoyue looked at them incredulously. I think you misunderstood. I'm not a monster. The bad guys all say they're not bad guys. She must be deceiving in killing her. In an instant, various garbage flew from all directions, and Xiaoyue hurriedly dodged but was still smashed onto her body. Looking at her disheveled appearance, Xiaoyue couldn't help but cry and laugh. At this moment, someone in the crowd threw a huge stone and quickly headed toward Xiaoyue. Xiaoyue's heart felt as she looked up at it, and her liver and gallbladder were instantly shattered with fear. As she saw the giant stone getting closer and closer to her, she retreated in fear. But what she never expected was that the boulder in front of her stopped in mid-air. After blinking, Xiaoyue was convinced that she was not mistaken. In just an instant, the boulders in front of everyone turned into fragments. Xiaoyue's heart suddenly raced with horses. How could this big stone break on its own? This is great, even if you explain it yourself, people won't believe it anymore. As expected, just behind the eerie scenes in front of those ordinary people, they even felt that she was a monster, scared to the point where she even ignored her own shoes and threw tools to flee everywhere. Xiaoyue's face was immediately covered in black lines. With a worried expression on her face, Xiaoyue looked at her dirty and smelly body and held her nose in disgust. But later on, when I calmed down, I thought someone must have saved her just now. Otherwise, I had no strength to fight back. How could I break that stone, let alone make it stop in the air? So Xiaoyue looked around, looking for anyone suspicious, and as she looked back, she saw a man passing by gracefully. Xiaoyue hurriedly caught up, and when she grabbed his hem, the man frowned and looked at her coldly. "What are you doing?" "I'm here to thank you." Xiaoyue looked at her in front of her, dressed in a red and white outfit, her wine-red hair adding a touch of softness to her stern handsome face. A pair of deep green eyes, like starry sky, felt like they were familiar to each other. However, she couldn't remember them. The man looked at her with an impatient expression. "You're mistaken, I'm not." Xiaoyue stepped forward to block his path and looked at him with determination. "I won't admit it wrong, it's you." The man's face was full of ridicule. "Oh, how do you know it's me? You have light footsteps, you must be a martial arts practitioner, and there are no other people around you." Xiaoyue looked straight at the man, who had no expression. Looking at the woman with golden eyes in front of her, she closed her eyes slightly. "I didn't expect you to know a lot, but unfortunately, I'm not," the man said as he brushed away Xiaoyue's cold face and left. Xiaoyue puffed her cheeks and looked at his departing figure with great dissatisfaction. She didn't expect him to look down on people so much. It seemed that he was also heading west. In order to understand what the monk was saying, perhaps following him would be safer. So, Xiaoyue found the villagers who had fled around and didn't have time to retrieve their clothes. Regardless of whether they looked good or not, she quickly put them on. Then use your agile posture to closely follow the arrogant man behind you. The man continued to move forward slowly, occasionally slanting his gaze and still moving forward without any concern. Night descended without warning, watching the darkness surrounding her. No matter how brave Xiaoyue was, she dared not linger alone in this place. So, he gritted his head and slowly approached the man. From time to time, there were sounds of distant and close calls coming from around, which made Xiaoyue feel energized. However, in the end, she couldn't support herself and fell asleep against the trunk of the tree. The man walked step by step to Xiaoyue, his deep eyes staring at the sleeping woman. "Xiaoyue, what should I do to you?" The man looked at the person who was still trembling in his sleep with a pitch-black gaze. His eyebrows twisted, and he picked her up and walked to the blanket next to the fire. His inscrutable expression slowly caressed her face. "You will regret following me. However, will you also regret yourself?" Haha. End of this chapter. 4. In Chapter 4, You Are the Key. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 You Are the Key. As soon as dawn broke, Xiaoyue followed Shenyang to the depths of the village. Although she was curious about why she would sleep next to him, after asking for a while, he remained silent and had no choice but to give up. After walking for a while, he gritted his teeth and chased after the carefree man walking ahead. "Where are you going?" "Can you say something?" The man suddenly slowed down his pace. "Go to the temple in the village. It is said that a mysterious object suddenly appeared in the temple thousands of years ago, and since then, there have been no living creatures around. I believe you should understand." The man glanced at Xiaoyue. "So that's it. No wonder I didn't see any creatures at first, even those people were very vigilant when they saw outsiders. But what does this have to do with you?" The man looked at the person in front of him suspiciously and raised his eyebrows. What does that have to do with you? Xiaoyue was speechless when asked for a moment. Indeed, this matter had nothing to do with her. Unexpectedly, this place was the only one within 100 miles with people. If she wanted to find an exit, she had to look for those villagers. Adding in previous experiences, it would be safer to follow this man inside. Thinking like this, Xiaoyue quickly ran over to keep up with his pace. Looking at the tall figure in front of her, Xiaoyue felt inexplicably at ease in her heart. The corners of her mouth unconsciously curved, and she came to her side and glanced at the man beside her. We've known each other for so long, and I don't know your name yet. The man walked on his own, completely ignoring Xiaoyue. He bumped into the dusty Xiaoyue, pulled his lips, and walked back to him in embarrassment. Upon hearing the woman beside him stop talking all the way, the man felt as if something was missing and frowned in dissatisfaction. Why not speak? Don't you want to talk to me? Xiaoyue muttered her mouth and stirred her fingers in anger. Are you just so eager to know my name? The man paused and looked at the woman in front of him, who was completely unaware and occasionally blinking, pulling out her slender thighs and walking towards her step by step. Xiaoyue watched him climb up, feeling helpless and retreating step by step, unable to avoid leaning against the trees. She looked up into the other person's deep eyes. My heart was pounding like a little rabbit. What are you doing? There was a moment of silence between the four eyes. The man pursed his mouth and suddenly opened it. Forgetting emotions, admiring forgetting emotions. The man put down his arm supporting the tree, took a few deep glances at Xiaoyue, and then turned around and left. Forgetting emotions, admiring forgetting emotions. Hope to forget. Xiaoyue felt that the name was so strange, she had forgotten her emotions, and had become like a silly and inexplicable person. After walking for a while, the two finally arrived at their destination, but at this moment, they were discovered by the gatekeeper and soon surrounded by villagers. No one has entered the village for 100 years, but today someone has entered. Upon hearing such great news, many people walked out, even the highly respected elderly people in the village rushed to the scene. The old man's murky eyes looked back and forth at the two of them. I don't know why you two came from a long distance. Xiaoyue unconsciously looked at the handsome profile of the man. She thought the man would keep silent, but to her surprise, Mu Wangqing spoke up. After all, in her understanding, he had always disdained to speak. I have no ill intentions, I just want to see the temple that the village has been guarding for generations. The old man narrowed his gaze and looked at the man with doubts in his heart. To be honest, the temple is very important to me. It not only concerns the safety of all beings in the three realms, but also whether I will return to my hometown. Xiaoyue was taken aback, realizing that it was for this reason that she was going to the temple. Where exactly is his home? Do we still have to go to the temple? The villagers whispered to each other and looked at each other. At this moment, a middle-aged uncle emerged from the crowd. To be honest, our temple has spirituality, and it is difficult for anyone who has not been recognized by him to approach it. Even the people in our village have not entered. Mu Wangqing looked at the group of people with bitter faces, their expressions indistinguishable. Xiaoyue quietly approached him and tugged at his sleeve. Do you have a way? No. You said it so directly. What will you do then? Cold salad. Xiaoyue's eyes widened in disbelief. You still have the heart to joke. So what do you think? Do I have to be strict with my smile? Oh, I thought you would be a dumbfounded melon that can't even make a sound with a stick. The narrow Danfeng's eyes narrowed sharply, and his gloomy gaze locked on the woman in front of him who was criticizing him. The scorching gaze of the person beside her made Xiaoyue sit restless, completely unable to ignore his powerful aura. Xiaoyue had to grit her head and speak urgently. All right, let's stop this topic. Are you sure you can enter the temple? Mu Wangqing's pitch-black eyes lit up with a light, and he gazed at the Xiaoyue for a long time before speaking slowly. Of course there is, and you are the key. End of this chapter. 5. Chapter 5 Inexplicably entrusted with important tasks. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Inexplicably entrusted with important tasks. Xiaoyue pointed at herself incredulously. Me. Mu forgot his emotions and remained silent. I don't have the ability to handle the world and the earth, and I don't have the amazing martial arts. How could it be me? Who said you don't have it? I said you have it, just follow me. Xiaoyue choked and had no choice but to keep up. Despite the unsuccessful persuasion from the crowd, the two of them arrived at the temple with Mu Wangqing. The closer they approached the temple, the more they were suppressed by the invisible air pressure, making it difficult to approach and even gradually experiencing breathing difficulties. There was someone who couldn't get close and had to give up. Others saw that the man had no movement but a slightly pale complexion, while Xiaoyue moved forward without any pressure. Xiaoyue looked at everyone not moving forward, and Mu Wangqing's face was very pale, feeling very surprised. Are you okay? Xiaoyue looked anxiously at the silent man next to her. I'm fine. Why are you all feeling so uncomfortable, except for me? As soon as the words were spoken, everyone seemed to hear shocking things and looked at Xiaoyue one after another. Xiaoyue felt even more strange when she saw everyone's reaction so strongly. However, Mu Wangqing seemed to be looking at her calmly as expected. You said you didn't feel any discomfort. Xiaoyue nodded, and Mu Wangqing pressed on Xiaoyue's shoulder. Listen to me, now only you can get close to the temple, so I can only ask you to take out the things that twinkle with golden light in the temple. But don't worry, I'll be with you. Upon hearing these words, Xiaoyue inexplicably felt a strange emotion and her face froze. Isn't that very uncomfortable for you? I can still hold on, hurry up, hurry up. Xiaoyue knew its importance and after much thought, she approached Mu Wangqing with a serious attitude, but was stopped by Mu Wangqing. Are you belittling me? Mu Wangqing felt displeased with her behavior and stared at the woman in front of her with an ugly expression. I just didn't want to see you get hurt. You know your situation the best now. Xiaoyue looked at him very seriously, her gaze fixed on a dazzling light. Mu Wangqing's heart was suddenly shaken, and he vaguely saw someone saying the same thing and showing the same concern. He lowered his eyes to cover up the restless emotions in his eyes and watched Xiaoyue, who had already set off, lift her foot and walk away. As she moved forward, it became increasingly difficult and dangerous, and even a storm gradually blew up, causing pain on her face as if cutting flesh. Upon seeing this, Mu Wangqing immediately exchanged positions with Xiaoyue and accepted most of the impact. Although Xiaoyue had a few wounds all over her body, there were no particularly large pain points. This man, even if he had physical problems, still had to protect her in front of her. It was strange that he was not moved in his heart. However, she didn't want to let him protect her like this, she could also protect him. So he grabbed the man's wrist and forcefully pulled him behind her, forcing himself to ignore the angry eyes behind her. Listen, it's a very difficult time now. Just let me be at the forefront. Even if you don't agree, I will try my best to be at the forefront. You can't stop me. The man who was originally very angry shrank his pupils slightly when he heard this sentence. Yes, he had never been able to stop her from making up his mind. It used to be, and it is now. It turned out that he still had no way to deal with her, and he hooked his lips in a lonely and forgetful manner. With the help of Xiaoyue standing up, Mu Wangqing and his companions successfully took down the contents inside and presented them to everyone. The colorful spirit stones shone brightly and amazed everyone, making them even more grateful and admired. Suddenly, the whole village knelt down to Xiaoyue. God, please save us. Xiaoyue was suddenly taken aback by the sudden action of the villagers and was at a loss. She quickly called them up. You're welcome, it's just a small gesture. Get up quickly. Besides, I'm not a big god. My name is Butterfly Xiaoyue, right? Miss Xiaoyue, this spiritual stone is very important. It is said that each of the three realms is now safe and stable, and maintaining its stability is closely related to this spiritual stone. Legend has it that as long as you collect 8 spiritual stones, you will summon the Tongtian gate to maintain the balance of the three realms. However, for some reason, those 8 spiritual stones split into 4 or 5 parts and fell into the human world, causing some areas' environment to be harsh, animals and plants to die, and demons and monsters to appear frequently. The people are struggling to make a living. Who knew that the girl could come into contact with the spiritual stone, which indicates that the girl is a destined person recognized by the spiritual stone? Xiaoyue looked at the pleading elder with a puzzled expression on her face. You asked me to help you collect spirit stones, but I have a heart but my strength is insufficient. Just as everyone was at a loss, Mu Forgetful suddenly spoke up. I will protect you, after all, I still have to go back to my hometown. You should know that if the spirit stone does not return in a day, the three realms will eventually suffer, and you will inevitably have to deal with it. Mu Forgetful deeply looked at Xiaoyue, who was also looking at him. She understood this great truth, and upon closer reflection, she fell silent. If this earth were gone, what would be the point of her living? So he prepared to pack his bags and stay overnight here, and set off early the next morning. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. The Murder Case in Longzhen. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 Murder Case in Longzhen. Along the way, Xiaoyue carefully looked at the stone in her hand, which was incomplete but still shimmering with colorful light. She still couldn't believe it could be so magical. Xiaoyue looked incredulous, causing Mu to shake her head helplessly. Walking up to her and placing the spirit stone in his hand, he found that the spirit stone had immediately become dull and lifeless. How could this be? Xiaoyue blinked her big eyes, unsure. Mu forgot his expression and closed his eyes expressionlessly. That's because it recognizes you as its master, a treasure in front of you, and nothing in front of me. Hey, don't say that. I just happen to be the owner of the spirit stone, and compared to you, I'm just an ordinary person. Xiaoyue looked at the man next to her with closed eyes, but saw him open his eyes and look straight at her. You have never been an ordinary person. Xiaoyue was stunned by his sudden words for a few seconds, and later even felt amused by his appearance of something really happening. I thought this was just what he was coaxing her to say, but I found it funny and followed him. Years later, when I looked back, I realized that he had never deceived him, but she had never believed it herself. The two of them set off towards their destination and passed through many towns along the way. Along the way, they heard many rumors, but neither of them paid attention. Just as he was about to finish buying dry food and leave, a person's conversation caught Mu Wanqing's attention. Ah, have you heard about it? A person has died in Longzhen not far away, with a very tragic appearance. His whole body has turned into a corpse, which is terrifying, with stains. Ah! Can you find out who did it? Are you joking? Who dares to investigate? That's God killing. I heard that the people who were killed were punished to death for committing heinous and immoral acts. Every time a person dies, the sky will show colorful afterglow. That's the arrival of God. So terrifying. Then, let's hurry and leave. Colorful afterglow. Mu Wanqing's sharp eyes suddenly narrowed. What's wrong with you? Xiaoyue tilted her head and looked at the man walking halfway in front of her. She didn't expect him to be so engrossed in thinking about things. What are you watching me do? Upon hearing this, Xiaoyue immediately refuted. I've been calling you since I finished getting my dry food, but you seem to have lost your soul and have no reaction. I almost prepared to use my secret weapon to wake you up. Mu Wanqing lazily lifted his eyes and looked up and down at her once. Just you. Wait until 1,000 years later. You actually despise me. Xiaoyue looked at the person and said these words, then left like this. Xiaoyue glared fiercely behind him with displeasure. If possible, one's own gaze could stare several holes in him. The man kept walking westward, and Xiaoyue didn't understand where he was going. But because he was still angry and refused to ask, he didn't say anything. Fighting back and forth, Xiaoyue clearly lost the battle and walked up to him, questioning in a bad tone. Where are we going this time? Go to Longzhen, I heard there was an accident and people died there. At first glance, Xiaoyue's mouth twitched stiffly. You went to Longzhen because of this. Mu Wangqing glanced at her sideways and said, otherwise, what do you think? Xiaoyue embraced her chest and treated her with open eyes. We're going to find the spirit stone. Don't tell me you forgot, what's going on instead? The man walking on his own raised an eyebrow. When did I say to go see the excitement? Xiaoyue opened her eyes in confusion and looked at the man. Didn't you just say that? You are hopelessly stupid. I didn't expect this woman to think about things so straightforwardly. Mu Wangqing let out a soft sigh and walked straight past her. The man said these confusing words again, and Xiaoyue scratched her head in annoyance. Later on, she realized what he meant, but it also made her angry all the way with an ironclad face, making many passers-by avoid her like they were looking at a strange person. This man, she really owes him in her previous life, always talking to her in a roundabout way. After walking for a long time, I finally entered Longzhen. Unexpectedly, as soon as I stepped into this place, it became the focus of everyone, whispering to the people around me. Xiaoyue felt something was wrong and unconsciously approached Mu Wangqing. Why are they so guarded against us? The man lowered his eyes and looked at Xiaoyue tugging at his sleeve, his eyes darkening. They are now birds of terror, cautious when they see anyone, let alone the two of us outsiders. Xiaoyue groped her chin and realized that her words made sense. As she watched the man staring in a certain direction, she also followed suit. It turned out that she was holding his clothes in her hand at some point. Xiaoyue immediately awkwardly withdrew her hand and smiled awkwardly. Sorry, I'm used to pulling people. It's nothing, I didn't care either. The man curled his lips in silence and walked away. Xiaoyue looked thoughtfully at her distant figure, feeling that he didn't seem to dislike her touch at that moment, but it seemed to be her illusion, because when she looked again, his peaceful like lake water eyes were all chillingly cold. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Underwater Tide. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Undercurrent surges in the dense forest southeast of Longzhen, eerie atmosphere permeates, and a group of demonic soldiers kneel solemnly on the ground, waiting only for the arrival of the king. Suddenly, the demonic energy surged and a black-haired man wearing a black robe appeared, and everyone shouted in unison. Pay respects to the demon emperor. The man in black glanced sideways, his eyes filled with a cold and bloodthirsty desire, his cold voice devoid of warmth. Did they come? One of them hugged his hand and answered. Yes, with eyeliner, those two people have entered Longzhen. Oh. The man chuckled and his eyes suddenly lit up. Finally, what was supposed to come was here. Xiaoyue, are you ready to welcome me? This time, I won't let go anymore. A pair of wolf-like eyes exposed my determination to take action. And not far away, Xiaoyue, who seemed to have an induction, felt a chill behind her. Why do you feel cold when there is no wind when you look back? And since entering Longzhen, I have always felt that something bad has happened. Feeling my chest beating, this unease is getting bigger and bigger. Mu Wangqing noticed the clues and thought there was something wrong with her, so he couldn't help but ask. What's wrong with you? Are you feeling unwell? I feel uncomfortable in my heart. Mao forgot his emotions and his eyebrows twisted. Let me show you. Just as Mu Wangqing reached out his hand, Xiaoyue immediately grabbed his hand and looked at him with a restless expression, her tone carrying a previously pleasing tone. Me, shall we leave? Why? I don't know why, but as soon as I step here, my heart beats like thunder. I feel like something might happen. A glimmer of brilliance flashed in Mu Wangqing's eyes. Patted Xiaoyue's shoulder. Don't worry, I'm here. Xiaoyue hesitated and finally nodded as she looked at the man. On that day, the two of them stayed in an inn, with only one wall separating their rooms. Xiaoyue thought that he wouldn't have anything to do nearby, so she slept peacefully. Not long after Xiaoyue fell asleep, suddenly a gust of yin wind in the candlelight swayed. A figure suddenly appeared in the room and came to Xiaoyue's side, gently staring straight at the woman lying in bed, extend a trembling palm and gently stroke her face. Xiaoyue. Feeling her nose bridge and eyebrows carefully, repeatedly touching her lips, looking at her pink lips, the man's gaze became deep. As I was about to involuntarily approach that soft spot, a cold and angry palm chi attacked. The man dodged the moment and left, immediately appearing on the periphery, only to find that one person had taken one step ahead of him. How dare you touch her? Mu forgot her murderous aura and looked at the person across from her with a sharp gaze. However, the person calmly brushed open their purple hair, their face bright as flowers, and their eyes curved. Joke, she's not yours. Why can't I touch her, Mi Shenyang? Shangguan has no me, don't challenge my patience. Shangguan Wum covered my mouth and smiled. Mi Shenyang, I'm just saying hello to my cousin. Why be stingy? However, considering years of love, I advise you not to do things too much. Shangguan Wum walked up to Mu Wangqing and raised my eyebrows and looked at him, his eyes turning cold, otherwise, I'll kill you. Mu forgot his feelings and immediately knocked off his hand with disdain, but the other party was indifferent and disappeared in the bursts of laughter. Hee, we'll meet later. Mu Wangqing looked in the direction of Shangguan Wu's departure, with a serious expression on her face. She didn't expect that there would be people and horses from the demon world so soon. It seemed that Xiaoyue's identity had been exposed, so it would not be easy to handle things in the future, and she might soon know everything. Thinking of this, his heart was full of entanglement. For her, he is still soft-hearted. Now it seems that he can only take one step at a time, hoping that the future will not be so bad. Thinking of this, I looked up at the sky and let out a sigh. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. This person is very problematic. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. This person is very problematic. As soon as dawn broke, Xiaoyue and Mu Wangqing got up early to investigate the murder case, but Mu Wangqing was full of worries along the way. He doesn't care about her words and actions, is there something wrong with him? So Xiaoyue pulled Mu Wangqing to a booth and sat down. Do you want anything to eat? Xiaoyue looked at the man who didn't answer and slammed the table fiercely, but the person across from her showed no response. Xiaoyue, who was out of breath, pondered whether he had a rare case of youth dementia. Just as he was about to take the wooden stick and knock on him, the man finally spoke. What are you doing? Mu forgetfully looked at the person across from him holding a wooden stick and stopping in mid-air. Discovering Xiaoyue feeling embarrassed for a moment, she smiled and said. I'm just trying to bug you, hee. Mu forgot his feelings and closed his eyes. Your style of handling things really broadens my horizons. Are you okay to say that I'm not doing it for you? What's wrong with you? Did something happen? Xiaoyue's face was full of curiosity. And Mu Wangqing looked at Xiaoyue with a hopeful expression, her face changed, and she felt it was better not to tell her for now. There's nothing else, just thinking about the murder case. By the way, you can carry the spirit stone with you. Looking at Xiaoyue, who refused to speak clearly, her face furrowed. Of course I did. Let's go to the murder scene, Mu Wangqing said before getting up and leaving. Xiaoyue was taken aback and quickly caught up. As she caught up with Mu Wangqing's footsteps, Xiaoyue's brain was spinning rapidly. After feeling some clues, she opened her eyes wide in disbelief and looked at the person in front of her. Do you suspect that the Longzhen murder case is related to the Lingxia? The man curled his lips and looked at Xiaoyue. I didn't expect you to be quite clever. Rarely praised by him, Xiaoyue was overjoyed in her heart. Of course, don't underestimate me. Mu Wangqing smiled, and the two of them walked forward with half a smile. When they passed by someone, Xiaoyue felt his suffocating breath and looked at the man behind her with a surprised expression, feeling lost in thought. However, Mu Forgetful fell silent as she listened to the woman talking beside her. Upon closer inspection, she realized that she was staring at a man in the distance, and her face instantly darkened. But upon closer inspection, Xiaoyue's face gradually turned ugly. What's wrong with you? Are you feeling unwell? Mu Wangqing, do you feel anything strange when you look closely at that man? Xiaoyue clenched his hem. The man looked towards Xiaoyue and saw a man dressed as a scholar disappear from the crowd in an instant. However, a faint resentment could be felt around him, but it was unclear. I didn't see anything. Xiaoyue widened her eyes, full of disbelief. Impossible, that man's breath is particularly murky, making people uncomfortable, and his face is particularly pale, which is abnormal whiteness. Mu Wangqing raised his eyebrows, obviously surprised. Oh. If you don't believe it, you can investigate. This person definitely has a problem. Seeing the woman in front of her so decisively, Mu Wangqing felt that whether it was true or not, it was more reassuring to go and see. Okay, I believe it. Xiaoyue didn't understand for a moment, but then she realized it. Ah. Don't be taken aback. I'll go investigate and you stay in the inn and don't wander around. Alright, I know now. I'm not a 3-year-old child. Besides, I'm so cute, there won't be anything wrong with me. Xiaoyue pointed at her face with a curved mouth and a bright smile. Mu Wangqing said, Does this woman really think she's beautiful enough to charm everyone? What a narcissistic person. Ignoring the faint jumping veins above his head, Mu Forget-Qing quickly walked away with a black face. Xiaoyue watched as the man walked rapidly, her face covered in circles. What kind of madness does this man have with a constipated face? Inexplicably, end of this chapter. Chapter 9. His eyes are filled with nostalgia and longing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. His eyes are filled with nostalgia and longing. After Mu Wangqing left, Xiaoyue faced a feast alone at the table. Normally, she would have been happy if she had been before, but now enjoying it alone is like chewing wax. Xiaoyue, who was disinterested, poked at the rice in the bowl. However, her sudden appearance alone made her feel energized. It was actually that scholar. He actually came to this tavern. What about him? Did you lose the tracking? Xiaoyue listened attentively to their conversation, but unfortunately, she didn't hear anything from a long distance. After saying a few words, the scholar turned around and left. After waiting for someone to leave, Xiaoyue went to ask the shopkeeper, and only then did she realize that he was also going to stay in this tavern or even in the last room she visited. Thinking of this, Xiaoyue was shocked and realized that she was living with the number one suspect. If he were to unleash his killing intent, wouldn't she become a dead soul under the knife? Just thinking about it makes my hair stand on end. Xiaoyue rubbed her arms and decided to go find Mu Wangqing. She walked through the endless stream of people, and as she was about to leave, the crowd in the distance suddenly became agitated. The horse is startled. Get out of the way. Hurry up. Everyone fled unsteadily, and Xiaoyue was squeezed in the middle at a loss, only to be pushed to the ground after several struggles. Ah! The pain coming from under her legs made Xiaoyue scream in pain. She knew the danger was approaching and had to support herself, but the pain went to her bone marrow, making it difficult for her to stand up. However, the frightened horse was gradually approaching, and at a moment of desperation, a figure suddenly appeared in the air holding Xiaoyue and quickly arrived at a safe location on the other side. Because she was afraid that Xiaoyue would tightly hold on to the other person's clothes, but the coldness in her hand still made her instinctively release her hand. As she was about to look up and thank her, her words suddenly stopped and her eyes widened. The person across from him looked at Xiaoyue's silent and stunned expression for a long time, and smiled. "Miss, do you know me?" Xiaoyue shook her head in denial like a tambourine, and her whole body jumped to the other side like a spring, murmuring to herself. "I didn't have time to hide from you, how could I know you? But where did I offend the girl? Are you so distant from me?" The man frowned and looked puzzled. Xiaoyue was startled and urgently denied it. "No, never, I'm just anxious to find a friend." "All right, I should go now." Xiaoyue had just taken a few steps when a piercing pain hit her feet one after another. The scholar walked over immediately upon seeing this and squatted down. "If the girl doesn't mind, I can carry her on my back." "No need, I can walk." "Miss, you haven't received my kindness for a long time. Do you feel disgusted with me?" Xiaoyue suddenly felt embarrassed and didn't know how to answer, feeling conflicted. After thinking about it, it was better for him to carry her back, so Xiaoyue had to tacitly allow him to carry her back. The scholar felt the person on his body tremble from time to time, so he quickened his pace. The icy and piercing feeling made Xiaoyue really unable to bear it, coupled with countless questions in her heart, so she asked. Why are you so cold?" The man's face froze for a moment, but he curled his lips and smiled. "A cold heart makes a cold person." "Ha! I don't understand, I really don't understand." The man chuckled and shook his head helplessly. "The girl is really cute. Let me ask you next, why is the girl so wary of me?" Xiaoyue was originally very satisfied with his praise, but she didn't want his later words to make her suddenly stunned. Didn't adults say that children shouldn't talk to strangers? Children. The man's lips twitched, feeling amused in his heart. At the same time, he thought she was very interesting and curved his lips to smile. "Yeah, you should be vigilant when it comes to strangers, and unfortunately, things will be much less likely." The man said halfway through and suddenly put on a smile, expressionless, which was inexplicably surprising. Looking at the man across from him with a hint of sadness in his eyes, one can tell that he must have remembered someone or something. "Have you also experienced unfortunate things before?" The man's gaze trembled, and memories of the past suddenly flashed through his mind. "Yes, in that story, there was a person who was very important to me, so important that I couldn't do without her at all." The man murmured, his eyes suddenly shining brightly. Although his expression was slightly sad, there was a deep attachment and longing for the person he spoke of hidden in his eyes. It makes people look at it, and their hearts cannot help but be moved. End of this chapter. 10, Chapter 10. Perhaps, he has a reason. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Perhaps he has a reason. Watching the man's genuine expression in his eyes, Xiaoyue felt inexplicably moved. The man coughed to conceal his discomfort at the moment. "Sorry, girl, I made you laugh." Xiaoyue smiled from the bottom of her heart. "Your relationship is really good, it's so enviable." After spending some time together, Xiaoyue felt that this person might not be an unforgivable person. But the bloody smell emanating from him made her furrow her brows, and she was wondering if she could understand him. However, she was afraid that it would cause a stir and she was in a dilemma. At this moment, a powerful force of yin and evil suddenly emerged from somewhere, and the man's body stiffened instantly. His gaze suddenly looked into the distance with suspicion. "Miss, if something unexpected happens next, I will deliver it to Mrs. Place and say goodbye." The man carried Xiaoyue on his back and quickly left. Xiaoyue let him put her down in a daze, and when she realized it, she quickly shouted out, "Young master. Can you leave your name?" The man paused and turned his back to Xiaoyue, who looked so lonely and cold under the backlight. Just when Xiaoyue thought the other party wouldn't tell her, she suddenly spoke up. "Under Lu Wenzhao." Xiaoyue blinked and immediately smiled. Under the butterfly moon. Lu Wenzhao looked back and smiled, and with a slight hook on his mouth, the clothing code flew and disappeared into the vast sea of people. As soon as the person disappeared, Xiaoyue's face became heavy. If it feels good, the evil energy just emitted is similar to the aura on Lu Wenzhao's body, but the other is just more intense. She really couldn't figure out why such a good person would make her hands covered in blood. What exactly drove him to a dead end? Xiaoyue sighed helplessly and suddenly remembered how to find Mu Wangqing. I haven't seen him for so long, isn't he lost? On the other side, Mu Wangqing's handsome face tightened and occasionally suppressed his angry expression. In fact, it was because there were too many turbid atmospheres around him that he tracked him to this point, causing the faint evil energy just now to be blocked by several forks in a few twists and turns, making the breath not as obvious as before. Mu forgot his emotions and his forehead was bulging with veins. Damn it. Where are these people going? Unfortunately, they have come to a place with so many people, and the way back is different from losing or not saying the result. The clenched fists creaked and creaked, but everyone passing by was intimidated by his strong air pressure and retreated. Mu Wangqing saw them looking at him as if they were looking at a devil, their whole face becoming more gloomy, and the surrounding air pressure became lower. With a black face, they angrily shook their sleeves and left. Dai Xiaoyue limped along the roadside, thinking of quickly returning to the tavern just now. Perhaps he would be waiting for her there, but Xiaoyue was too anxious in her heart. She didn't have time to steady her steps before taking a step, and her body swayed left and right, about to fall to the ground. Xiaoyue's heart suddenly hung, and she closed her eyes in great fear. At this moment, a pair of strong arms caught her, and a faint anger echoed from her head. Why did you get injured just after leaving for a while? Upon hearing this voice, Xiaoyue quickly opened her eyes and looked up at the person in front of her. It was him, Mu Wangqing. As soon as she saw him, her heart suddenly felt at ease, and a brilliant smile appeared on her face. Yes, without you, I wouldn't be able to do it. Mu Wangqing's face stiffened and then calmed down. Let me take a look at your feet first. Xiaoyue hesitated and didn't want to be touched by Mu Wangqing, bowing her head slightly embarrassed. Still, let's not do it anymore. With a solemn expression on his face, Mu forgot his feelings and shouted unquestionably. Don't talk nonsense. After speaking, disregarding Xiaoyue's obstruction, she took off Xiaoyue's socks and revealed a snow-white, scallion-like foot in front of her. Mu Wangqing's ear was slightly red, and she forced her scalp to massage her. Xiaoyue also blushed, her neck was thick, and her heart was beating like thunder. After a while, Mu Wangqing suddenly felt the residual evil power on Dai Xiaoyue's body, and her face changed. Did you run into him? Did he do something to you? How do you know? Did I have his scent on me? Don't worry, he didn't do anything to me, just said something to him. Also, he saved me when I was almost knocked down by a horse. Looking at the motionless face of the man across from her, Xiaoyue frowned. Do you not believe me? No, it's just strange. Do you seem to have a good impression of him? Xiaoyue pretended to be serious for a moment, and her eyes flickered slightly unnaturally. I just feel like he might be a good person, maybe everything he does has a reason. Upon hearing this, Mu Wangqing's once unfriendly expression became even more gloomy, and her thin lips tightly pursed, making the quiet atmosphere even more mysterious. It makes people unconsciously uneasy. End of this chapter.